that work? Did folks get a prompt?
I think, yeah, you were able to.
Okay, great.
Yep.
All right, sorry about that. So I'll share my screen, but this is just taking what was in the draft AIAN state plan, and then I added some potential next steps for us as DELC. So everything in black is just copy and paste word for word from the American Indian Alaska Native state plan. Anything in red are things that I added. So there was a section in the plan on, that's really okay, Dory. There's a section in the plan on the number of children enrolled in schools. And I know we had talked last time about getting some data on children in care. So I've added a potential metric around children enrolled in publicly funded programs. If there were a desire to understand children enrolled in all childcare programs, that would be a very long ways off, because we don't currently have a mechanism to collect data about children in private childcare settings. I also pulled, related to that, there was a section in the ODE plan for students who were suspended, expelled, or pushed out. So I translated that to be a potential metric on the number of children suspended or expelled from childcare or early learning programs. So for both of those, I think we would need to review our current data collection methods as DELC, what data we currently collect, and what infrastructure would be needed to collect that data and collect it consistently. And then these in black are the actions that I just copied and pasted from the ODE plan. So the first being that every early learning program in Oregon implements a lesson plan based on historically accurate, culturally embedded, place-based, contemporary, developmentally appropriate AIAN curriculum. The outcome that was defined in the plan was that students will receive teaching in pre-K and kindergarten, and that they will learn about tribal history, shared history. What we would need to look at is our authority for curriculum. Currently, we do not have requirements for specific curriculum. It's requirements that for curriculum components. So we would just need to look at how we could layer that together and kind of do a crosswalk of requirements for our publicly funded programs. And there may be an opportunity to look at rulemaking or something that we could include in licensing requirements, but we currently don't have curriculum requirements for privately run childcare programs. There's here, the next one was focused on the workforce. So making sure that educators receive training to cover the essential understandings. We similarly would have to look at our professional learning plan and how we could leverage the infrastructure we've developed with professional learning system funds of the Student Success Act to include this, and how the Tribal Advisory Committee, we want to be a part of really identifying this and making sure we are adapting it to be developmentally appropriate if we're thinking about birth to 5. The next one is increasing access to high quality community-based early learning programs, which create and utilize culturally supportive environments. So the outcome defined was that children will be in programs which value their cultures, identities, and employ successful strategies for student success. I think that's a place where, as we look at developing that tribal set aside funding structure, whether it's a % of funds or a communal pot of funds, that could be one way to get at this metric or action. The next was supporting systems and advocating for processes that establish the successful recruitment of Native families into early learning programs, with the outcome that students will show improved successful educational outcomes. The next was ensuring that all Native students are correctly identified, as mentioned in data justice. So that comes back to the data itself. And so making sure we can look at our current data collection methods and infrastructure. Creating a strong system of support and intervention for students not on grade level. I think that was in the Department of Early Learning and Care section, but I think this is a place where we could commit to following up with the Office of Indian Education to better understand what role do we have in that versus ODE, because, you know, obviously grade level isn't the terminology we would use in birth through 5, but how do we maybe tweak this to be reflecting developmentally appropriate care, and where, because we know that early intervention, early childhood special education currently resides in the Department of Education, where is this actually a place for ODE to play a lead role? So that's something that we could follow up with the Office of Indian Education on. And then these were just the top lines that they did that didn't necessarily mention early learning, but felt applicable. So improving graduation rates for students. So we know that if you are investing in high quality early learning, there are lifelong impacts for children and families, including graduation. So I wasn't sure if that might be a place the Tribal Advisory Committee wants to define that further with an early learning lens in mind. Building capacity for Native educators. So looking at our goals to support Native educators through our professional learning system, similarly recruiting and retaining educators, and then strengthening partnerships with internal and external agencies, and supporting government to government relationships and the work of us as a new agency. Yes, Sonia.
Can we put a metric in there about, I know at the early learning stage, it's not called a IEP, but
Yeah.
that identify kids that are on support plans, because maybe it's a better way to track them once that they also enter the K-12
Yep.
system.
Does that look right? IFSP identification for tracking when students, when students enter the K-12 system. Does that feel like a good?
Yeah, I think it's just important to see how many of our kids are being identified, and kind of also seeing if it matches up once they go in the K-12 system, if they're automatically getting those supports.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Brandy. Yeah, we could definitely talk about a teen mother call out in here. Mhm. Any other real-time reflections? I'll make sure this gets sent and posted on our website, and we can continue working through this, but I just wanted to share my quick takeaways after reviewing the draft plan from September.
So when I was in high school, a friend of mine had a baby early.
Mhm.
And so it wasn't called Early Head Start at the time. It was called something else, and it morphed into Early Head Start later. But they would go to the homes of these teen mothers, and they would pick up the moms and the babies on a bus, and they would take them to the community college. And then there was like a separate nursery for the babies, right? And the mothers would work on getting either their GED or their high school credits, however it is that they could. But then they also had high quality childcare for their babies. And so I think that might be a way to increase graduation rates,
Yeah.
while also providing high quality childcare for babies.
Yeah. Love that, Brandy.
And I'm not sure, this would kind of be a question for Valerie or even Lloyd or Angela to give input on, but if we wanted to track those early learning immersion programs that some of the tribes have that could maybe lead to set aside or additional funds for language programs. I don't know if that is something that we would want to track or put as a goal, as to increase or fund or something.
Okay. Yeah. That's great. Anything else that jumps out for folks?
I think it looks really good. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll send this around, and this is something that we could keep bringing back and sort of unpacking. I'll work with our team on sort of a quick initial assessment of, what data do we collect, do we not collect, and any quick thoughts on how this would fold into sort of our existing structures. Then maybe we can have some follow-up conversations about prioritization and what might be developed as we're procuring a new data warehouse system for us as a new agency. We'll be launching the next phase of our grant management system, our awards management system, and it's going to have data collection opportunities. So I think this is a really good time to have the conversation because we're building a lot of this now over the next year as Delk.
And then one of the position or both of the positions that we're hiring for
Mhm.
would also be responsible for the work that's wrapped into this plan. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, I think we would probably leverage both the liaison and the tribal affairs director, depending on which metric we're talking about. Particularly when we think about the broad action around government to government relationships, right? Like that's one of the things the tribal affairs director would really lead. But yes, we'd have a team then who could really focus on this, continuing to define it in more depth and working with the rest of our teams to make sure it's incorporated into any future work that's being planned or designed. Great. I will
Okay.
get this out for folks.
Since we didn't have the executive session, the agenda will probably run shorter than usual. But the last item that I think we had, Alyssa, was around the website and the branding.
Thank you, Jonas. I apologize that I feel like I'm the entire agenda today. I wanted to revisit the consensus that was reached last month and just confirm. So last month we had talked about if we shift away from this idea of kind of a tribal hub and an entity, that we would not necessarily need this Otella branding. I think the branding, if we decide not to use it, we have it. So if we decide in 6 months we do want an entity, it's there. The one that is a little bit not higher stakes, but does require a decision is the website, because we need to determine whether we're proceeding with that contract or not. And if we are, we need to be pulling information together in terms of what you would want on the website. So last month, the consensus was we don't need a website because you all as tribes are promoting the services, supports, programming that you all offer as tribes, and that we don't need a website to point folks back to you all, and that we could leverage the Department of Early Learning and Care and having a tribal advisory committee page, which we'll have as a place where we could be promoting grant applications or procurement opportunities. But I wanted to confirm that is still the direction so that we can make final decisions with this contractor.
Did we discuss before where it would have to be separate than Delk? It couldn't be on the state page, right? So
That's what was sort of in development, because we are now part of the Oregon.gov host, where this would sit and how it would interact and still meet state requirements as a state funded page.
I was trying to think of how it would, because I always think more information is better than little information. If people didn't go directly to tribes where they could get information collectively, which would be great to have a website, but then would it just be an information, like just getting information out there, not an interactive website, how it would benefit developing it, I guess is just where I'm trying to wrap my head around, like, because then once that the funds and it's developed, then who pays for the upkeep of it? Who,
Right.
you know, who updates it, you know, who would then be the admin of it, you know, how long would the contract be with the web developer, and then do they step away right after the development? So I'm just trying to think of what the benefit of it would be.
Yeah.
Any other tribes have
Mhm.
feedback on that? Like, we're not sure.
Open hearing. I also share what Sonia was saying. I'm trying to go through my head of cost benefit analysis, and I think I'm mostly worried about who would be responsible for keeping updated information on it and so on and so forth. So I don't know whether all of that can't just, I mean, the information, the connections to the tribes, links to the tribes websites, can't all of that be placed on the DELC website?
Yeah, we could work with you all on what we could work with you on what it looks like, what information's included. It would be a lot easier for our staff to maintain that. And if anything broke, it would be Enterprise Information Services that fixes it. We wouldn't have to be paying for a contractor in case something stopped working. So we could definitely work with you on what you'd want on that page and the frequency to update it and that kind of infrastructure piece.
So I guess then my next question is, what do we benefit by having this separate web page? That's what I'm trying to answer in my head.
Me too. That's exactly where I was. Like, what is it? And is it going to just be an added if we can have all that information on the other ones? But I love the logo and the colors and all of that.
Yeah, I know. That's hard to give up. Yeah. I just don't know how we're going to maintain it.
And we have the logo and the colors. And so as we continue to have the Tribal Hub conversation, if it does make sense that there's separate branding, or if you all still want that branding on the page on the DELC site, we can do all of that. Yeah, I mean, we've got the information, we can incorporate it.
Thanks, Lloyd. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of overarching reasons we would need it is because I can't think of any, if anyone else didn't, that we couldn't reference on the existing page or put the links of the tribes on there for information. Because it would kind of be good if it's on the state DELC page, because then it could list the meeting dates. It could have, you know, that Otella specific information, links to tribes, kind of multi, like ODE's Office of Indian Education page.
Hmm. And
Using,
we can reference that as a starting point. If that is something that is meeting your needs, we can start there.
so it doesn't sound like there's a huge need for it that couldn't be done currently.
Yeah, I agree with Sonia. I think we just are going to have to pause on that and just go with what we can try to do on DELC's website for now.
Great. We will go forward with that direction and follow up with the Tribal Advisory Committee page and sort of seeing what else you all would want represented there going forward. I think that's
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I think that's the end of the agenda, Sonia, if you want to adjourn or close us out.
Yes, does any tribe have anything that they want to bring forward before we adjourn? Or any agenda items for next month? If anything does,
Sorry,
Yes,
Sonia.
ma'am.
I was just gonna say, I think that we, as far as agenda items, I think we just need to leave the plan review on the agenda each time. So my hope is that we just keep kind of taking a look at it until we're all, feel like it's in a good, complete place. But I would have that as a standing agenda item.
I agree. And then Jonas, the one timeline that you did, is that something that the tribes are going to get to? Because I think that's a good summation for us to be able to turn into our tribal councils, as well as on the work that we've been doing since most of us are council appointed to the committee. It would be it's great overview of where
Yeah.
what we've been doing. Makes us look very busy.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave that with Alyssa, and she could, of course, send it out to you guys, and you guys will have access to it going forward.
Great.
To share it. Jonas, was your plan to finish that after the December meeting?
No, it'll be done before that.
Great.
Yep.
And Sonia, I know that the tribal summit is on the 6th, and then the 8th is the Gov2Gov Ed Cluster, and then we're supposed to meet the following Wednesday, and there was talk of it being in person. Is that something that you all have a decision about? I know it's a lot of travel for folks, a lot of days in a row.
That is, and maybe it's something that we want to have a Zoom in December, and then look at the scheduling out of
Sure.
the next year, because there are ed directors that are going to the summit, and then we'll be in Portland the 7th and the 8th for G2G. So
Okay.
I do think
There's
it's a lot.
also Region 11's Head Start conferences in California that week. So I'll be down there with Angie. So neither one of us will be here.
The
So
week of
probably,
the-
I don't even know. Zoom wise, I can probably
Yeah.
find somebody to cover if you need.
Yeah, so I think we should just decide now to go ahead and have December's in on Zoom.
We can do that.
Well, if that's everything, then we can move to adjourn.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Alyssa, when did the things about the executive session, is that new, or has that always been, and it's just a clarification?
Executive session has always had a pretty narrow definition, but really qualifying the Tribal Advisory Committee as a public body that just passed in session and took effect in September. And we really just became aware of that change in the last few weeks, now that one of our positions is filled. So yeah, it's a little bit of a combination of both.
I'll have to remind our attorney for PSU, because we go into executive session all the time. But the rule about, like, we've even been told if more than 2 of us go out to lunch together, that we should not discuss any PSU business or anything because of appearance of more than 2 board members being together at any one time. So it is very strict in the state. So
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's what we're hoping to bring back and kind of get into in more depth, sort of all the nuances of this and the expectations of members of public bodies and all of that.
So is that the same with April's committee, or is that different?
I'd have to go look. I don't recall if the Student Success Committee is advisory to the State Board of Education, because that's what's really bringing the Tribal Advisory Committee into this, is that you're advisory to the ELC. So
Okay.
there are a lot of convenings that aren't advisory to their learning council, so they don't necessarily have to follow those public meeting requirements. So I don't know if the AIN Success team is advisory to ODE or to the State Board of Ed, because if it's just ODE, then it wouldn't have to follow those, is my understanding. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll see you Friday.
Thanks all.